Hello, welcome. I'd like to introduce myself real quickly. My name's Nathaniel Warner. I'm an associate professor here at Penn State in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. Uh, that's a picture of me if this doesn't pop up. Um, I do a lot of work on, here, let me move my little screen so it's not in the way. I do a lot of work on water quality generally and salinity of those waters, or tracing the source of pollution, you could think of. A lot of the work is done in Western Pennsylvania, where we have both historical coal mining, but also oil and gas development. So I look at different impacts of that and different ways we dispose of that oil and gas wastewater, which is really salty. It's like 5 to 10 times seawater salinity. So it has a pretty big impact when you put it in the environment. I also end up looking at what that might do once you dispose of water, and then impacts to freshwater mussels that you can see down here, what we call bioaccumulation, or the potential toxicity associated with that. So that's a big, broad overview. Little background about myself. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, Wayne County. Went to Honesdale High School. If anybody's coming from there, that'd be pretty interesting. I went to Hamilton College in upstate New York for my undergraduate degree. That was kind of the first time I left the time zone. I went out west, and I was a geology major. So we did what's called a field camp, six weeks hiking around out west, mapping different things. I then studied abroad in Tasmania, Australia, and again, a pretty amazing experience for that. Then, as a senior, actually, my senior project as an undergraduate was to work in Antarctica on climate change, and I was on a ship there for several weeks and did sediment course. On my way back, before I started grad school, I trucked around South America doing the Gringo Trail. Um, interesting experience for my Spanish was pretty poor. Then I went to Miami University in Ohio, did a master's project. For that, I went to Nepal, and during that project, we looked at water quality impacts. And we looked both in the mountains and in a big city called Kathmandu. Then I was took a little break, did a little environmental consulting at a company called Environmental Resources Management in Annapolis, Maryland. That was great. I also got to travel there. You can see the theme here. Went to Iceland and worked on naval air stations there, looking at water quality again, and Sicily, looking at water supply there in Sicily. But I always knew I kind of wanted to get back to academia, and I went back for my PhD at Duke University in North Carolina. There I did work on tracing sources of salinity in Morocco. Morocco actually produces a lot of the fruit that is eaten in Europe. I think something like 90% of the tomatoes and orange is eaten in Europe during the winter. So the agriculture was very important, but they have this problem of increasing salinity. Then I went to Dartmouth College for 2 years as what we call a postdoctoral fellow, which means you finish your PhD, they call you doctor, but you're still learning all the time. I guess we're still learning. And that was great. And that was before I came to Penn State. I've been here at Penn State now since 2015. So I'm now an associate professor. My lab, I don't call it the Warner lab. I call it the salts lab, tracing salinity with isotopes. It's really because it's everybody in the group, I think, is contributing, and I like to call it that group. Ooh, I also like the art side of things, I guess. So STEAM, not just science, technology, but the art part in there. And many of my students do these drawings, and I try to do some myself as well. When we are doing our projects, it kind of helps to visualize what we're doing. So here you're just seeing, disposal of oil and gas wastewater, but then what are the impacts to surface water and the critters in there? Treatment of high salinity fluids, getting something useful. You might have heard the terms beneficial use. There are useful materials in there, but unfortunately there's also radioactivity, so we got to keep that in mind. And then impacts to groundwater. If you heard about fracking, I did do a lot of work on examining the environmental impacts associated with fracking. These are just some examples, again, of discharges of high salinity fluid to streams. These are along Blacklick Creek or the Allegheny River in western Pennsylvania, and we look at the water and the sediment downstream of those sites. And this is work that has continued for many years and will continue for the future. We also have projects associated with looking at dirt and gravel roads. And we spray. You can see dust is a big problem for not just visually, but for inhaling the particulate matter. So in the lower left-hand corner there, you can see what we spray oil and gas brines on these roads sometimes. Looking at the environmental impact of that. Where do those high salinity fluids go? Does it go into groundwater? Does it go into the surface water? And what happens to the dust itself? That is a big ongoing question. So there are current projects with this. And might be a good point to say that just projects associated with EnvironMentors, I would picture would be students doing a portion of a project helping out current graduate students. I have 5 current PhD or master students. They all have various aspects of these projects, and they would be the mentors too. Some of them are in the EnvironMentors program. We also look at freshwater mussels or bivalves, these little clams that live in the rivers. Allegheny is a big place for this. So we look at accumulation of metals there in those. These are just some field pictures of some of what those things look like. Some stinky waters in some case, and just a former student, Emma, here trudging through the mud. So if you like to get outside, get dirty, play in the water, this would be a good one, including some acid mine drainage sites too. And one of the projects I mentioned, now we're also examining microplastics. We're expanding what we do a little bit. Why would this be good? Water quality is of concern for a lot of people. We will incorporate some citizen science in this. So, for example, we could look at, we do a lot of work with radium and radon. We could look at radon in your community. If you had a group of people interested in radon in their basements, we can actually measure that and maybe link it to the geology of the area, depending on where you are. We do a combination of field work and laboratory work. I think that's kind of not necessarily unique, but that makes it a little bit more interesting. It's not just lab work all the time. And you will learn, how to evaluate some of these projects with data analysis. Maybe using Excel would be a good start. How to present data nicely, which is a skill that a lot of graduate students are still working on. Even professors are certainly working on this as well, but a little bit on statistics, and not what we call big data, but I call it small data. Just 10 to hundreds of samples, not these thousands and thousands of data points. And also, why is it interesting? Generally people have broad interest in these results. So if you're participating in it, it's something interesting to talk about, and the results have real world meaning for human health and the environment. And I think I'll leave it at that. I hope that was interesting. I hope you got something out of this, and hope to see you at the roundtables.